But in a situation where you find that a person look at the situation,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
All right, now we begin with Daily Trust newspaper, and the first story there, at a glance, you would see shippers to cut demurrage empty container charges after strike threat. You would also find Buhari cautions world leaders against hoarding COVID-19 vaccines. That's on page 4. The lead story on Daily Trust newspaper says Justice Orderly, prime suspect, Malami trade words. With the riders, I consult for AGF Ajodo. He's drowning. That's according to the minister. So there's a claim by I would say, prime suspect that he is working for the Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami. And then there is this back and forth where the minister is saying, no, he had nothing to do with that. Another rider there says, whistleblower claims, I'm a prayer warrior. You'd also find, we'll get to the root of the matter. That's according to the NBA. The pictorial on Daily Trust this morning shows you scenes of Tuesday's gold mining collapse in Niger Republic, where 13 Nigerians were said to have died in that I would say mishap. Below that, at the very bottom, you'd find the story about the missing Vanguard reporter who was found dead. That's on page 8. Nigerians can look after themselves if infrastructure is in place. That's according to the president. You would find that story on page 4. The last story there says 5G has no health effect to reduce data costs. That's according to the NCC, and that story is on page 18. You know, there's this conspiracy theory about the 5G network that, we saw more of that conspiracy in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, where people said, look, this 5G thing is responsible for the COVID-19 that we are experiencing. And, you know, telecommunication experts actually came up with very strong arguments, you know, to convince people that, look, this 5G thing is the reason why we are having COVID. Well, it's not yet proven, but it's, like I said, a conspiracy theory that we are yet to really have evidence for. But that's that on the Daily Trust newspaper.
Okay, let's take a look at some of the stories on the Nation newspaper this morning. On page 5, you'd find why our debt profile is rising by federal government. On page 6 of the Nation newspaper, you'd see infrastructure would help Nigeria grow faster, says Buhari. And on page 2, you'd find Andy Uba rejects Anambra governorship results. Oh, wow. You find the details of that story on page 2 of the Nation newspaper. And on page 30, Lagos, others to benefit from UK's £27.5 million. And the big headline right on the Nation newspaper states, governors, AGF, Malami working for consultants. And one of the riders is saying war over Paris Club loan refund rages. $7 million for 2-page letter raises dust. Another rider states minister insists states, local government can't back down. You'll also see case still in court, says Fayemi. These are some of the stories on the Nation newspaper.
All right, and on the Guardian newspaper, the stories just below the name tag there, you'd see Research Institute begin indefinite strike over government's alleged refusal to honor 10-year-old pact. And you'd find also resign now or get sacked. Aggrieved APC stakeholders tell Buni committee. Herders kill 8 Zangon Kataf natives, injure others. That's on page 5. You can get the details of that. Uba rejects election results, may go to tribunal, of course, as expected. After every election, there will always be a winner and a loser, and the tribunals will always be there to settle grievances. Now, the lead story on The Guardian. Intrigues as police parade 14 alleged invaders of orderly's home. You would also see the riders there say journalist, lawyer, police officer, soldiers among suspects. That's interesting. You want to get the details of that story, I'm sure. AGF tackles fake consultants as This Day disowns editor. You'd find also FG bullying judiciary to instill fear ahead of 2023 elections, Wike is alleging. The other stories there at the bottom of the pictorial: 24 million people living with diabetes in Africa, say WHO IDF, with rider diabetes worsening COVID-19 fatalities on continent. That's on page 6 of The Guardian. Troops bust 20 illegal refining sites, recover crude. And that's also on page 21. These are some of the stories that made the headlines today on The Guardian.
Okay, as we earlier told you, we have Suleiman in the studio to review some of the stories on the papers this morning. Of interest to me on the Daily Trust newspaper is the story that states 13 Nigerians die in Niger Republic gold mine collapse. According to reports, about 18 people died, in that gold mine collapse. What could you just take us through,
Well, I think first of all that that shows the close cultural, economic, and other kinds of relationships between the two countries. After all, the people who live on the Nigerian side of the border and the Nigerian side of the border used to be the same people and are still the same people culturally, and there's a lot of economic integration, even if informally in between them. So the fact that out of 18, all 13 are Nigerians shows that many Nigerians are in fact living there, and in some cases they don't even see themselves as, they don't feel Nigerian separate from Nigerian. The people just feel themselves as people, which is characteristic of people who live in between borders generally. But so that shows you that there's that economic, social and cultural integration between the two countries quickly, because that's even the highest number, 13 out of, but it also shows the kinds of jobs Nigerian migrants do in other countries, because working in mines are kinds of work that's not so common even in Nigeria itself. Yeah.
Okay. This back here, in Nigeria, we tend to see cases. For instance, in Jos, you see illegal miners. They dig up, and just leave these places open. This shows that it looks like we don't have a culture. We don't have a mining set culture that we imbibe here in Nigeria. What could be responsible for this?
That's entirely true. But the culture which we like is that of enforcing law. That's of law enforcement to say that you said illegal mining, which means it's something that is prohibited, something that the state disallows. But people still do it, and then the state allows it. It's everywhere in the country, and somehow was probably a contributing factor to the mess that we have in places like Zamfara and Niger states now, because the gold mining or illegal gold mining is one thing that links these two places in common. I'm not saying that that's the cause, but maybe a contributing factor. So it's more about not enforcing the law, but sometimes it even goes beyond that. It's about the state not being creative, because here you are, people doing an illegal business, which means not only are they violating the laws, they are also not paying taxes, even if they are making money out of it. So in some cases, you don't need to even enforce the law. You just need to change the law, to turn a previously illegal activity into a legal one, provided that the state itself can benefit from it. And that way, the people who are doing it, who are in it, will now have an interest in ensuring that it is regulated. Will have an interest in ensuring that, it doesn't lead to the end of their business. But in our case, we want to enforce laws. Some of these laws, Kumar, are laws that were probably colonial laws that are not meant for citizens, laws that were meant for subjects, laws that were meant for people who are conquered rather than free people, So we don't think we just carry on enforcing laws that are not used. You just say, okay, come, mine, but register the companies, register your employees, pay this amount of money to your employees, and so on and so, follow so and so and so regulations, and you have more or less a whole new sector of the economy coming out of that.
Now, by the time we look deeper into this story, would you say that there could be a correlation between this kind of illegal mining, this kind of activities, and the rising spate of insecurity, banditry, financing of, the act itself and all of that?
Well, anecdotal, yes, but maybe not strong evidence, but anecdotal, yes. Generally, particularly in Africa, mining, whether legal and illegal, because a lot of mining in Africa, for example, in Sierra Leone, in Democratic Republic of Congo, is illegal, but because there's a lot of it that is legal, but also illegal because it doesn't translate into increased income for the state. So those who are involved in it, both the nationals, that is the locals, as well as the multinational companies who come from different places, have an interest in distraction, distracting the attention of the state. So there's always crisis in these places, as I'm sure you're aware. In the case of the Blood Diamond, if you watch that film, it traced that, that linkage between the war and conflict in Sierra Leone, as well as the natural mining that people were doing in India. It's the same in Democratic Republic of Congo. So at that broader level, there is that correlation, or at least anecdotally. But in the case of Nigeria, it's not exactly established. I don't know anyone who's done research to say, okay, this is the extent to which this local mining has influenced this conflict. But if you hear people from Zamfara, especially at the initial stages of the conflict there, a lot of people attributed it to the illegal mining going on there. So it's probably probably a grain of truth.
All right. Now another story here, the lead story, in fact, the whole conversation about the raid on Justice Odili's house. There's some arrest that has been made now, and the prime suspect is now claiming to be working for the minister. What's maybe wrap our heads around this story?
Well, the first thing is that it is rather unfortunate, very, very unfortunate for the Minister of Justice Bakar Malinis, and it's quite unfortunate that his name is caught up in this mess in the first place. Because we should all ask ourselves, why is the prime suspect not saying it is it is me or you or any other person in government? There are 42 ministers in government. There are, but he is not saying that it is any other minister but the Attorney General. You understand? It may not be true, and the suspect has not shown that it is true, and the burden of proof is on him to show that he is not being truthful. But the mere fact that it is Mr. A rather than Mr. B, whose name has been associated with this, I think it's not something good for the Attorney General, because it's an invasion of the house of a sitting justice, of the Supreme Court. In my opinion, if you invade the house of a sitting justice, is part of the Supreme Court itself. Mm-hmm. So the same sanctity you would expect to accord the Supreme Court should be accorded the homes of those who sit on it. Mm-hmm. So if the Attorney General of the Federation has been associated with invading this, that's a problem. That's one. Secondly, it also shows the kind of lack of due diligence that our so-called law enforcement agencies do. Because look at, for example, the what do you call the so-called informant, the original whistleblower, And blowing in Nigeria has an incentive. You know, you get paid for blowing the whistle on corruption. You get paid 5% of whatever it is that you blow the whistle on. So that means that any person can come and make all sort of claims. But also means that the level of due diligence that the state and the respective authorities need to do before they accept any claim should be quite high. But in this case, it doesn't show that, because he said he had gone there to pray on behalf of somebody in the house, and that's it. He's now a whistleblower, you know. So I think that's a problem.
Okay, it says here, we'll get to the root of the matter according to the NBA. Some will say we already have a very slow justice system. Would anything positive come out of this statement?
Well, I think the main point is something positive should come out of it. And what is something positive in this context? That is, somebody should be held responsible for it, because the separation of powers is a very strong democratic principle, and is one which must be observed, but not only observed, but must be seen to be observed. So if you have a situation where all the security agencies are under the arms of the executive, right? So if you have a situation where any one of them, would go and invade the home with, on a spurious search warrant, that doesn't demonstrate separation of powers. So I would expect, to guard against similar occurrences in the future, we would expect Nigerians would love to see that somebody is held accountable, as in being prosecuted, and where they are found guilty, convicted, and then the law takes its full course.
All right, now still staying with the Malami story. Again, he is also fingered in another conversation about the Paris Club refund. And the Nation newspaper is leading with the stories. Governors, AGF Malami working for consultants. He says, the writer says, war over Paris Club loan refund rages. $7 million for 2-page letter raises dust. Minister insists states, local governments can't back out. Case still in court, says Fahmy. So it seems like he's been dragged everywhere, left, right, and center, about these allegations that he is siding, with these so-called consultants, for the Paris Club Fund and all of that. What do we know so far on that?
Thank you. That's a very important story. And if you had not gone to it, I would have taken you to it, because I think it's something that's very important. So thank you for bringing it up. First of all, his name will be dragged into many issues because of the nature of his office. So that by itself does not represent guilt or any indication of doing anything wrong, because he is the chief legal officer of the country. So that's likely to happen. Things like that, that's one. But the most significant issue is the idea that consultancy services for Paris Club is running into 418 million US dollars. This is Nigerians should not even focus maybe too much on whose side is whose side, because you're going to find it difficult to get evidence on that. But you can look at just the facts of the case, or indeed just one single fact in the case. The idea that somebody is charging 418 million US dollars as consulting fees for doing what? That's huge. That's unbelievable. For doing what exactly? And to which country? To Nigeria.
For some will say for facilitating the securing the reform,
the relief, the debt relief. The thing is this. Let's go with Jeff Bezos, the richest person, or the person with the richest company, Amazon, in the world right now, worth $1 trillion US and above. Do you really think he is going to pay 480 million US dollars for any consultancy service now? Any. Because if you have that money, you can start a company of that kind that 5 years from now will be competing with the parent one. You don't pay that kind of money for consultancy services, period.
Now, the governors are also claiming that those involved, in and the whole Paris Club refund have been given their share in 2016. And so why is this, new list of consultants, which we have not even seen?
Well, that's
Many
why
people are saying, who are even the consultants that we are even talking about?
Exactly. Very good question, because this thing, it's easy to do editing shoddy in the country, because what people normally do is they use high-sounding words, words that will, befuddle everyone else. Consultants, parish club, blah blah blah. In most cases, this just hot air, nothing to it. So let's know. It's easy to determine the truthfulness of this. Let's know who the consultants are. Consultants, when they work, they enter into MOUs, memoranda of understanding, isn't it, or some contractual agreements. The funds will be there. Let's see how. Let's see the terms of reference, the specific activities they were supposed to do. Maybe, for example, there was understanding that, okay, if we get this refund or this relief, as the case may be, then we will give you a certain percentage of it. So to that extent, it can be quite high. But even then, it will mean that the state will have a minimum where it doesn't want to pay beyond. And these things have been going on for a long time in Nigeria. These kind of things, they are all, I don't have evidence to show, but as a Nigerian, my feeling is that a lot of scam is involved. I will give you an example. In the Bakassi Cameroon case, around early in the administration of former President Obasanjo, there were these lawyers who were supposed to be defending Nigerian case. They lost, and Bakassi went to Cameroon, and yet, they charged the federal government millions of US dollars for
losing the case,
doing nothing, So I think we need to really be a bit more circumspect about this.
Okay, we're seeing on the story still on the Nation newspaper where Andy Uba is rejecting Anambra governorship results. Soludo was announced, victorious following his victory in the elections, and we're seeing this coming along. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, I think he has a right to go to court. He has a right to seek redress if he feels injured in the process, if he feels that, but by all consensus, virtually everyone, which is what is an interesting thing about democracy, everyone, all media, the civil society groups who monitored the elections, journalists who were there and so on, by all consensus that yes, INEC had some problems, but the election was free and fair, and that the result reflected the wishes of the Anambra people. So if someone else has any grounds against that, he can go on. But then that also raises a red flag, because sometimes if people are not able to win an election or win office through the ballot, but then they want to go and do so in courts, where, as we have seen in the country, they can use money or other kinds of influence to manipulate processes. But we hope that the judiciary is resilient enough to resist things like that, if that is the aim.
But with that kind of gap, that the results are showing, one would say, why even contemplate going to the tribunal? I mean, isn't it enough margin, to show that, look, this is a victory? Well,
There are two ways to look at the margins. You can look at the margins individually. Soludo having 112 or 116,000 votes, and then the others 50, 40, 20, and so on. But you can also look at the winners and the losers. If you put together the results of all the other three candidates, or all the other 18 candidates, their votes, the total votes, the PDP, APC, YPP, especially these three, but also all the other small parties that were in that context, 18 of them, their total votes is higher, and above that of the winner of the election. So that says something about the kind of democratic system or political party system that we have. My guess is that the election would have been more interesting, more fast, if you had just two parties.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break now, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at some more stories on our newspapers. Please stay with us.
latest updates on current topical issues and breaking news by downloading the Trust TV mobile app on your Android devices. Go online, click Google Play Store, search Trust TV, install the app, and get doses of unfiltered information on happenings all over the world in your pocket. Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Nice to see you, sir. You got a 10-year-old son, a 12-year-old son. He's a shill boy. Yeah. And how did he get to that stage? You allowed it to happen. You allowed it to fester. It's like a cancer.
It's a failure of the family, a failure of the society, and a failure of governance.
We are still going into some other hideouts to see if any apprehensions will be made tonight.
To operate within the context of the law with much respect to human rights.
Get latest updates on.
All right, thank you for staying with us. And if you're just joining, you're watching Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. And of course, this is where we take a look at the stories that made the headlines. And we have in the studio Suleiman, the Deputy Editor-in-Chief, Daily Trust newspaper, reviewing the stories that made the headlines today. Now, let's just, before we go, take a look at this 5G conversation, by the NCC. Yes, it's saying, reassuring members of the public that the 5G thing has nothing to do with our health. It doesn't impact negatively. It says that it's going to reduce cost of data. But is the conspiracy that I'm even more concerned about. Why do people have that notion?
Yeah, it's in general, there's always that relationship between technology and society, between human beings and technology. There's always that contradictory relationship. People love technology. They make use of technology every day. They, in fact, can see value, that technology provides in their lives and so on. But at the same time, with novel technology, with any new technology, not just 5G. We have seen this before with the internet itself, with many other things, with social media and kinds of things. There's always that moral panic, that, wow, this and that comes from this technology. It is because we're making use of this technology. That's why this is happening. It's a long story. It happened at in the early 1900s. When radio came on, it happened when telephone came on, it happened when television came on, when the internet came on. So it's something that those who study technology and society are quite familiar with. But the thing is, what you said earlier is entirely untrue. The 5G has no connection whatsoever with the pandemic. It is not something that comes from China. If that is the case, then the 4G will have connection with some other disease as well. Because it's only an upgrade upon what we already have. So it's just that people have that fear of anything new. You understand? Before any new technology is diffused, it's first and foremost followed by this kind of skepticism.
Now, the NCC released a statement saying they are ready to start, auctioning the spectrum to deploy 5G networks by December 13th. Do you think we are ready?
I'm a bit worried about that. We're a bit worried because I don't know. We always have this penchant to put the cat before the horse. Most countries, there are very, very few countries in the world where 5G has become settled issue right now, as I speak. Even in the developed countries, that's so people are taking time to study because what normally happens is that existing policies or existing legislations may not in fact be suitable to the new technology that you are trying to adopt. You understand? So governments will take time to study how existing legislations will affect this new technology, what needs to change, and so on and so forth before giving the go-ahead. I don't know why we in Nigeria were. It's just like this idea of being the first African country to launch the e-naira, whereas in the whole world, not more than 1 or 2 countries have electronic currencies yet. So I think it is that penchant, and it just shows not that we're strong, that it shows that we're not serious. Because you need to do that due diligence. You need to find out to know more about these companies themselves. Whether or not they have actually done similar kinds of work elsewhere, and to what extent, and with what level of success or problems or challenges and so on and so forth before you start issuing spectra to companies. You just can't rush into things like this. If you remember Huawei in the UK, initially the government approved of it, and then they backed out as a result of serious concerns, because a lot of people are saying that national security, is intimately connected to 5G network. That's different from conspiracy theories about COVID-19. So a country, Nigeria, that is facing a lot of insecurity challenges everywhere, should be concerned about how, companies from elsewhere will come, how this will affect its own national security. So it's not something you can just throw at any just company that is available. You need to take your time to do your diligence, study the companies, but also to study the situation before you start issuing spectra. In any case, the ones we have now, we haven't made the most use of it. The 4G that we have in the country, yes, so it's not really about 5G. What we really need is the broadband access that we still lack. Let people be able to receive internet services in their homes the way they receive water and electricity in their homes, and let the cost be reasonable. Not that they will say 55 gig, 20,000. Who pays 20,000? Nobody does that. Pays 20,000. The equivalent of 20,000 around the world for 55 gig of data is too expensive. It's not accessible.
All right. Well, at this point, we'll end the review for today. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with Suleiman, Deputy Editor-in-Chief, Daily Trust newspaper.
But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that